No? All right. Hi, everybody. This is the World Campus Tech Club. My name is Ray Baker. Tonight, our guest is Daniel Stiegman, and he will be giving us an overview of cyber threat intelligence and the maturity model. So with that, you can take it from here.
All right. So everybody can hear me okay, yeah?
I can.
Okay. And let's see here. You can see my slides. Are you seeing the overview? I mean the
Yes, I can see it.
presentation mode? There we go. All right. So the way this came about is that I think we were both at the Trace Labs OSINT hunt. And asked to speak, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of background. I spent about 13 years in the Army, doing infantry intelligence work. Went on to a three-letter agency, the National Geospatial Agency. I always found intelligence, I would say, it's just fascinating. It branched off from, oh my God, what a perfect timing. After 9/11, I'd gotten out of the Army, just before that, I was technically still in until just after, but got out of the Army, accidentally broke my leg, and hanging out with a whole bunch of people, and they were wondering, who's this Bin Laden guy? What's going on? Why did they do this? And all that stuff. And I was the guy just fresh out of the Army, and people started asking me a bunch of questions about things. And my ability to research things and find out what the base meaning of the problems that exist in the world or locally or what have you, it was a fascination. It's like reading a book and you love that book so much, you get to the end and it suggests other ones and you're like, I need to read another book. If any of y'all have ever had that. So that kind of started my career in intelligence. I went from more of the human component to the cyber. Very beneficial when you get out of the military. I retired, and now I work for a private organization, and I run a separate nonprofit. I'm the president of that and founder, and it's a very tight-knit a small group of veterans who do analytical work and try to help advocates to locate missing children and help law enforcement find children that are being exploited or been taken and exploited. So human trafficking. Very small organization, just a handful of us. And so, well, I'm going to cover cyber threat intelligence in a way that isn't from the person that started in IT and came up. I came from the intelligence world. I would say there's a big difference because where you might think there's more vendor-assisted, technical, granular education in the IT world, and coming up, this way that I came up combines art and science, and kind of get through it here. So I'm going to give you kind of the overview that I think a lot of private organizations, even public ones, should get when asking yourself, how should cyber threat intelligence function within my organization? So here's my agenda. So everybody hears me okay so far?
Sounds great to me.
All right. I'm not yelling into the mic.
Not yet.
All right. Okay. So there's a difference. Cyber threat intelligence versus threat intelligence. You're looking at the base way that I understand it with any organization is that you are, as the threat intelligence analyst, you are the ambassador to your organization about the threat. It's based not only in investigative work, you're looking not only at the reactive work, but you're looking at the proactive. Let's look at what was and see what can be, or what was intended. Most dangerous, most likely. And I understand that some of you guys might have a similar background, and that's awesome. So this will sound very familiar to you. Way that's different with cyber threat intelligence is that you're using data models, because you're not only working with the human component, you're working with the information security component, the computer component, the technically driven part of this. So you're using external data, internal data, but working on the network, computer, and human component itself. And you're trying to explain that to your leadership because they don't have a whole lot of time to get into the deep analysis. So the way that we can improve an organization, the organization I went to didn't necessarily have a program, and I started it up for them. This is some things that you guys can have. You're going to need some data models, structured analytical models. Some of you have probably heard of, and if you're drinking for this show, take your shot now, because I'm going to say MITRE ATT&CK framework. I would say OD&I has the cyber threat framework, NIST, things of that sort. So you have those models to base things off of. Even when you're dealing with analysis of the human component, you think of things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, other models. Those are models that help you kind of process, put things into buckets. You also think of cognitive processes. How do the humans think? Is the way that you're thinking going to be a problem in your, is it influencing the wrong endstate, the wrong idea of analysis, I guess. Investigative work, we talked about the proactive and the reactive. Investigative work is the reactive. You might have an incident that happens, and your incident response team may look at things and say, this is what happened, and now you're going to explain what happened. We'll get into that a little bit further. Collection of data, looking at it, analyzing it, looking at the language that's used. Maybe that's something that's put into a code that's their name, and that kind of infers what their intent is, and making sure that you can write. Are you going to convey your message the correct way? So then we'll get into that. The way that CTI can help leadership is, I want you to think of this while we go through this. At the top level, I want you to think about policy. What is a directive that is given, and the way that that is given to drive operations? So you're going from the strategy that is given out to the operations, the way in which you want things to happen, how you take a policy and you apply it, and then down to the tactical, technical level is the exact way that it's supposed to, that is applied. So the intent of how it should be applied, the directive, how it should be applied, and how it is exactly applied. So for leadership, it's policy and procedure. Managers, you're looking at the operational guidance and the worker bees doing their tasks. One of the main process that the intelligence folks use, the intelligence process. Now, I know if somebody's seen this before, you're probably going, oh boy, I've heard this and it looked different, it looked the same, I've heard it 1,000 times. This is what works for me, and I hope that you find one that works for you. It's not a perfect thing, and it never will be. Everything is dynamic and changing and always wants to improve itself. So this is what works for me because I'm pragmatic, and I hope that your organization likes it. They may have a different flavor as you try to apply it. So how does this work? You have a problem set, and in that problem set, you have, let's say, we have no intelligence. Your leadership, your organization states. So they say, bring me intelligence. You'll have your direction, and in that direction, you have the problem set. They ask certain questions to be answered, and you collect as much information as you can related to. You're going to analyze that information, throw away things that aren't relevant, apply things that are. You're going to put it into an idea or a message of some sort, and you're going to disseminate that information back to your leadership and to the organization, your customers, they call it, as a whole. So as your decision makers provide those things, as you collect those things, you make sure that you have a skeleton of each product that's going to help you along your way. By skeleton, I mean is you have the structure of certain questions that you have to be asked, certain buckets that you have to fill, and products that you have filled out to a degree that can be reapplied with the pertinent information, whether it's a monthly trend analysis, whether it's an executive summary or things of that sort. Now, what you'll notice is you have feedback and refinement that circles around this whole process. Why is that? It's because it's continuous. It never is, it's always part of the process and always applied. And so, hold on one second here. Oops. So, as part of the analysis, what we want to look at is everything, like I said, that applies, you may go down a trap of your own. I found this recently. You're looking at one, let's say, piece of malware, and it has this one IP, and this IP you find out really wasn't relevant. It was more like a process certificate provider or what have you. And yet some other organization may say that, oh, that's malicious, but it really wasn't. So you might go down a rabbit hole. So you want to evaluate everything, use previous knowledge. You want to find confidence in that information. You'll have, I'll go on YouTube and look at how, I think it's called a threat intelligence library. They kind of show you all these different information sharing organizations and how they overlap and which ones. It's like a Venn diagram, I guess. It's quite interesting. When you create your product, you disseminate your product, you want to make sure that it's tailored to your customer. You will find that the refinement process sometimes will get a little annoying, but it needs to be done. You need to know who your audience is. I tell you that because I still fight that battle every day. Somebody will come in, they'll think that this isn't quite what they were looking for, and then you'll talk to somebody else and they'll say that's exactly what I want, and then they'll have their contention and what have you. So always know your customer and refine. How does data go from intelligence? And that's one of the things that the folks who hired me really knew that was the moment they wanted to hire me. It's because I told them that information is not intelligence. If you look at this, you may have a whole bunch of emails, a whole bunch of products, or a whole bunch of information, data. Let me correct myself. You have a lot of data out there. Maybe it's your firewall, maybe it's whatever vendor product you have, and it may not be relevant to what you're looking at. So you're taking all that data and you want to look at things and you put it through the filter of processing and exploitation. This is part of your intelligence process. Your data is able to, can answer yes or no questions. Is this valuable? Is this not valuable? Information is a lot of data, but it's more, this is how we found it applies. This is the solidified, this is things that we know. The intelligence and analysis and component of that, the filter to get to your final product, it's going to sit here and say, this is what we know, and from previous trends and the intent, this is what we assess is going to happen. You used to be able to give a most likely, most dangerous, or you give some sort of projection out to what it could be, and there you go. Data, information, and intelligence. There are three different things. and you could see how the structure of each one. One of the things I would like to reiterate as you go into maybe this work is that the CTI, the Cyber Threat Intelligence Team, shouldn't really be part of one of your information security center's teams. It needs to be able to talk to vulnerability management. It needs to be able to talk to incident response and deal with the business operations. Maybe you're dealing with brand recognition and or VIPs. Definitely have a strong relationship with SOC monitoring, because that's your initial intelligence is usually best the earlier you get that information. I think that you need to have that line to the leadership within the information security office. If you don't have that leadership connection, then you're going to miss out on a major part, and I'll talk about intelligence requirements later on. It's the questions that leadership wants to have answered. You need to be able to ask that without having as many filters down the leadership chain. So how does this process look as it build out? Sounds like more people are joining. I don't really see the number there, but
there's 7.
Okay, good.
Total.
Yeah, so the update thing probably worked out. But all in all, this is how it builds out. So we have a preparation stage. We want to understand, maybe this is you just initially starting in knowing your organization, knowing the activities that are going on. You want to, it's hard to understand what the threat is going to do to you, your organization, if you don't know your organization, if you don't know what it looks like. So there's a process that you can do, and it's called preparation of the cyber environment. I would say that it's a difficult task, but not impossible. Who are you now? Or am I asking you? I want every computer that we have, and know what systems we have and what current updates they have, what's their exact address and all that stuff. That's not what I'm asking. Are you a financial organization? Are you a hospitality organization? Are we looking for the financial degradation being the threat? Are we looking for intellectual property? Are we looking for PII, personal identifiable information? What is it? So if you don't understand what the threat is looking for, what's looking like the hot ticket item, or lack of a better word, the crown jewels of your organization, you're going to have a hard time doing your job. So we're going to have a direction. We're going to understand what policies are in place, what's the strategy of your organization, what's their end state, what do you want to get at the end. You're going to collect all the information. We talked about it. We're going to understand what happens when we have data leaks, any kind of attacks, major events that happen, maybe something as small as a customer had a very bad experience and now it's public and now it's messing with your brand or your reputation. You want to know about other breaches. Maybe breaches happen to a third party or supply chain, a vendor, and now that affects you because they have partial of your PII of your customers. You want to be able to look in the logs. That's your whole bunch of collection assets right there for you. And you want to analyze that. You want to base it off of knowledge. You want to put it into those buckets of your data models. And you want to exploit that information the best you can to fit into a proper product. So I've probably beaten that horse a little bit, but it's going to, at the end, give you a very good intelligence product that people can walk away and be able to walk into the hallway and say, hey, I just had a great meeting with CTI, with the threat intelligence team, and this is what they told us, and it makes sense. You want to make sure that you can do that. We talked about the 3 levels: strategic, operational, and tactical. Real quick, I'll tell you, when I learned this, and you'll see it in business intelligence, I think that they flipped tactical and operational. Now, I don't quite know why. And they may have a reason, but I haven't heard that reason thus far. Because I've talked to guys who've done auditing and they follow the business intelligence thing, and I argued with them about this. but I'll leave it at this. I was at an academy, and they said that you have to be tactically proficient and technically proficient. But first they said you be tactically proficient, then technical. And I asked the question, how can you be tactically proficient if you're not technically proficient? How are you supposed to do and apply something if you don't know the process of how to do it? So it goes strategic, operational, and tactical. And we'll go through it right here. So it's basically, you'll see the word art, okay? Because this is where we get into the broader, as I call, floodlight thinking, where you see things as a whole. You're going to be able to look at things and see how that fulfills a policy. You need to understand not just, hey, it's LokiBot, or it's, Ursnif, or any other kind of malware type. You don't want to just understand that, or hey, this is a phishing email. We got another phishing email. Thanks, Bob. You kind of want to understand who is targeting your organization and what are they trying to accomplish. This is the kind of intelligence that'll help out your guys who work in risk. Any kind of alerts and controls that you have, special protections against maybe online payment sites, keep them things happening like form jacking and stealing credit card data. What's their motivation? What does he want? What does the threat actor want to get to? And you want to understand impacts. And understand some of you guys are, I think, risk analysis guys. This is important stuff that you need to look into. So maybe you do have a Russian cybercrime group. You understand that they want to take money. You'll definitely see organizations similar to MageCart, and I think I can't remember that that Russian cyber security firm. They talk a lot about Russians and ATMs and banking malware. So they want to gain a lot of money as an asset. So what does that do to your organization? Well, that affects customer trust in your brand. Like, I'm giving you my credit card information that's not safe anymore. Excuse me. Operational cyber intelligence. This is, and I think the top line says it all, you're directing your people how to apply the policy. You're doing task organization, day-to-day decision making. You're looking at the trends. You're not just looking at the very granular pieces of information, and the threat information itself is going to give you kind of the direction technically of how they're going to apply things. You're going to look at what targets they're going after, and this will give you the start of saying, okay, well, this is MageCart. Who do we know? Oh, this is a certain skimmer that this MageCart group was using. These are the groups that have been using that lately. What can help you out here is a lot of those information sharing groups. I think RHISAC, AutoISAC, maybe FBI's got an information sharing group. Whichever one you decide, your organization decides to go with, whether private or public. So you're looking, like I said, you're identifying things, trend analysis, what are the objectives, and all that. So tactical cyber threat intelligence. These are the specific tasks that are given to your analyst, and you're trying to make sure that these are short duration. Hey, this is what I need to know right now. Let's do it. This is what the operational side gives to you guys. It's usually your monitoring guys, some of the guys working in IRT. And so this is real-time information that's coming in, and maybe it's coming from external sources. Who knows? This is where you look at IOCs, in indicators of compromise. What the diagram here is that you're looking at an IOC, indicator of compromise, and how that feeds into back up the chain. I should say it's going. Looks like it's going down, but it's back up the chain to help you to a certain decision point. And this last bit, this is what the maturity models that from what I gathered from 3 different organizations, I kind of piecemealed them together in the way that made the most sense from my previous work and discussing it with a couple of work groups. When you go into an organization, and we talk to a lot of other organizations that are just starting theirs out, this is kind of what a lot of organizations have nowadays. In the last, let's say, the couple of years, cyber threat intelligence has picked up. So an immature cyber threat intelligence program, it's more, hey, we got information from this vendor feed or from our monitoring. Hey, here's an IOC. Now that's threat intelligence. That's usually their idea of, hey, I got an IOC and this vendor we paid a whole bunch of money for, just told us what this means. And maybe that's more in the information side, as we talked about the difference between data, information, and intelligence. I would say intelligence is information plus context, right? And that's what we're looking for, is context. And usually immature CTI programs don't have that. So what it's needing, like I said, is all that context, external threat intelligence information from, let's say, the information sharing groups like I talked about, and then being able to report it properly in the dissemination process. And that's where a basic CTI program comes in there. You're doing more intelligence collection, not quite on the analysis side yet. You're just most of the time putting the information you're getting into context. So you're correlating threats, you're showing how you action on IOCs. We block this. This is the difference that's been made according to alerts, blocks, and what have you. You're doing internal, external reporting, and you're discussing things with your other security teams. What you need to do now is not just looking at the bits of information and saying, hey, this is the piece of malware, what have you. We're going to get more into who and what is their intent and what have they done before. So an advanced CTI program, you're looking at both internal and external. You have those processes in place. You have the documentation that will put that information out there. And you're hoping that your product is influencing the security decision making. You want to understand adversary behavior. You have to talk to other intelligence peers. You got to talk to your peers. I know a lot of guys, a lot of groups, like to keep information close to chest. I don't think that works out too well. Yes, there's certain legal things that can, be important. I think the TLP, white, red, black, I think that helps out. Looking at it, if you don't know what I'm talking about, excuse me. But I would definitely say sharing information, being collaborative, talking to peers is going to help you out. Networking. If you go on, General McChrystal did a thing on TED Talks about information sharing, intelligence sharing, and how they benefited once other organizations started talking to each other and sharing information. That's the whole purpose behind the information sharing, the ISACs. So what now, you get into the next level, what you're looking at, a mature CTI program. You're now looking at better projections. Everybody, your program is in place. Your organization looked at it, looked at all the products, definitively said, this is the products that we want. This, your customer bases, you have identified everything. You've applied what I call key intelligence requirements or intelligence requirements, the questions that are asked by leadership, by the organization, saying what threats are there to our pay sites? What outside organization types are mostly targeting us? Things like that. You need to help them with that process after you learn about it a little bit more, and then have them ask the questions. Because if you don't ask the question, you don't lead them to that question a little bit, you're not going to be talking properly to each other. And that's not going to be an effective CTI program. So in AI, and it seems like I'm diverting a little bit, there's a process, a hill climbing process. And in that, you have a binary yes or no question to get to the top. Your first question should be, am I climbing up? And this goes through the hill climbing process, and it says, yep, I'm up. But only does it by one step. So if it's at the highest point that it thinks it's at, and it'll like take the next step, yes or no, it's going to stay there. But if you say, I climbed to the top, now let me check 3 down, it may be able to find another climb that's even higher. Now, that's called local maximum and global maximum. Why do I say this? Your monitoring in IRT, incident response teams, even your security program, is doing investigative work. They look at what is. Is this a problem? Did we get infected? Did we have malware? Did somebody steal information from us? Yes. They may not search any further on that because it's investigative. It answers yes or no questions, right? That's when we talked about information and data. It answers yes or no questions. Intelligence does not answer yes or no questions. It needs context. And it's the one point I want you to give you the best thing out of here is intelligence does not answer yes or no questions. It gives you context. Yes, it does it. Yes, they did this, but this is what it means. That's the global maximum. That's why, if you ever do intelligence, cyber threat intelligence, I want you to look for that global maximum. Always look for what things were meant to do. What did this mean for you? If this was malware, was allowed to go through your system, or somebody clicked on this phishing email and was allowed to enter their credentials, what was going to happen based off of everything that you now know? And you tell your organization that, and that'll save them tons of trouble, tons of money. And this is why CTI is so important for organizations. So you want to understand the threat landscape. You want to understand the internal issues. You want to understand all that. You are able to produce products at all 3 levels. And I'll end it with that. That's a mature CTI program. So I will stop sharing. If I can do that, stop share. Does anybody have any questions? How long did I go?
38 minutes.
Yeah, I went a little bit over.
No, you can go for a whole hour.
Oh, I was there for a whole hour. Okay, that works out. I have I have time. So if you guys want to ask any questions, I know I kind of got a lot of details and covered a lot of areas, but
if nobody else has a question, I have a question about your nonprofit, which is unrelated to your PowerPoint. But if you want to plug that, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, nonprofit Pathfinder Intelligence, still young. What I do is I take the intelligence work that I've done, and how do I put it? Law enforcement does not get paid very well. And sometimes if you have a talent, if you don't have a big heart, that talent goes off into, private organizations. And if you're very talented, you follow sometimes the money. Law enforcement has a lot of tasks to do and a lot of paperwork. And so what I try to do is I've seen how evil people can be. And I said, I have time and I have talent. And I want to be able to, for the kids that are in a room with someone they don't know and are probably the most scared that any human could be, especially as a child, how can I help them not be there anymore? You know, so I lived in a lot of places. Pretty much every place I went, I saw human trafficking. I mean, it's just everywhere I went, and some of those people were kids, um, and they're not there on their own free will. No kid wakes up and goes, "I want to do this." Whether it's regular work or whether it's sex trafficking and things of that sort. So what I decided to do was, working for a company's nice and all, but does it have heart? I'm saving my company money, but does it have heart? Am I doing something for somebody who isn't trying to use a service and what have you? So I started Pathfinder Intelligence, and I thought, well, I have a lot of fellows, ladies and fellows, brothers and sisters that came from the service and probably feel the same way. Like my mission to do good in the world, I don't feel like I'm doing it anymore. I'm enjoying my family life and barbecues and being at home and the safety of my own home, but I don't have that purpose as much as I used to. So a lot of the folks that I use that volunteer their time are veterans, and usually with backgrounds in intelligence or law enforcement and or information security background. So even if it's OSINT, I try to use them. We found thus far, I have to do it in my own time. So we found one child here in Missouri. I live in Missouri. I worked a case for a very long time in Las Vegas. Have not found that person yet because both the people are probably responsible for that are her own parents, and they're not saying anything. They'd rather go to jail. So what we do is we try to work with advocates. So a family member who's missing child, missing person will have an advocate in one way or another who hands out flyers, tries to get the word out there. And I work with them. I collect as much information from them, the family. I talk to the family, and I talk to law enforcement. I say, hey, what way can I help? Maybe I use Google Earth or another product similar, and I trace a timeline, a visual graphic timeline. I look through what they've said publicly because people like to talk, especially nowadays with social media and things. I think that's what Trace Labs tries to look for, is people like to talk on all the social medias, and they put the information out there and try to apply reasonable knowledge of what's going on and see if we can catch somebody in a lie. So one example person was hurt their child, supposedly threw him against the wall, and they looked up online for how to keep kids from how to stop seizures in kids, and they found marijuana helps stop seizures, and went and bought pot within an hour of when they supposedly hurt the kid. So you take little things like that and you kind of see what's going on, and law enforcement may not have the same background as some of the guys I work with. I say fellows, but we try to do the best we can without overstepping boundaries. We're not, hey, I heard you took this person, and confronting. We never talk to anybody that's considered part of the people that took the child. We don't write to anybody and try to capture any information. We just observe, turn that information in, and let's say you're looking at before Backpage got shut down, you'll look at people selling themselves online, and maybe you'll see a picture of the person that's being sold and their biological data of a missing person in your area. You've identified their hair, height, tattoos, any kind of special information. Maybe it's a picture in the background of somebody. Maybe they're sitting on a bed, showing their escort picture, and there's a painting in the background and certain sheets used on the bed, and you go, oh, that's a hotel that's in this town. So you apply those little things, and you try to find out, hey, well, this person's selling themselves, and this is the hotel that they took a picture of themselves in, and you turn it into the law enforcement organization and help them out a little bit. So there you go. And so I have been doing it for about a year and a half, and we're picking up a little steam. And we'll work with, we got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school here in our area, and we'll work with them on teaching kids and other folks how to protect themselves in situations where a stranger approaches them, how parents can protect their kids better by, following certain rules, to maybe letting kids, go to sleepovers, but checking people out, and just how to protect their kids a little bit better. Any kind of online stuff. So
the reason I asked is because our club is kind of a breeding ground for people who like to assist in this sort of thing. We have former law enforcement, my vice president. I work with Operation Safe Escape and Trace
awesome.
Labs. I actually sent you an email because I want to help.
Yeah.
I do OSINT for them.
Cool.
Maria, who works with human trafficking stuff, I briefly spoke to her before.
Yeah, awesome. See, sorry, I don't know some of these folks' backgrounds, so probably redundant in everything. So
They wanted to know if you had a website.
we're in development of a website. I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
We're trying. I just had to establish a board. It's one of those things where I'm very functional, or kind of minimalist in my operations. I don't really take money, and unless I absolutely have to. We haven't got to that stage yet. We're just doing the work first, and then I just, it's all free for we work on a no budget right now, so
Right.
So it's mostly just volunteers who just want to help out, and I'm contemplating talking with the what they call the ICAC in our area, the Internet Crimes Against Children, and some of the missing person organizations in our town, and seeing if we could do something similar to what Trace Labs does. And I'm just going to talk to Trace Labs and see if if there would be any kind of ideas we could toss around if we want to do something similar on a local level to help out some of these, we call them ICACs out here. I know they're kind of regional, and seeing if they have any cases that need to be focused on to help catch up their guys. So
we are actually doing a Trace Labs event this Saturday. If you have any specific missing people that you know of that are on NamUs, you can send them my way, and we can put it in our game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's been 1 year. I'll tell you, it's been 1 year since this one that I've been working. She's been missing, and man, it's been a headache. So I'll give you her name, and
yeah, that would be great.
I was trying to see if they would help me out with that one. So we're kind of in a structure process right now to going into a couple of programs. We're going more into the human trafficking side, and seeing how, there's a correlation there, of course. So
yeah, and I know Trace Labs is going to integrate that a little bit more into their stuff. I've been talking to them. I mean, we can talk off this meeting, but I talk to them a lot. I'm doing like design work for them and stuff. So
awesome.
Ron said to let you know that he has an investigations company, and I'm supposed to give you his personal.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. In there, I think maybe I didn't hit the last slide. pathfinderintelligence@gmail.com. Feel free to write me. I any help. I try. I worked on one Missouri cases. My advocate that I work with, she's out of Indiana. She is a busy person. She had a friend of hers, family member, disappeared. Well, I think over 25 years ago, and she's been doing this for nearly that time. Where she advocates for tons of people, and she just gives me cases to try to see where I can help. So some attorneys don't like it, or prosecuting attorneys don't like it, because sometimes they just like want to be, yeah, they're gone by this time they've been murdered. We don't know where they're,
Right.
yeah. So it's a little disappointing. I mean, you guys know that, you guys know that, probably familiar with that. So
there's probably a lot of crossover with domestic violence that you might be able to work with Operation Safe Escape too. I know they've
sure,
got a lot of big companies
yeah.
to back them.
Yeah, I'm all up in that world. I'm a foster parent too, and so I deal with all as much as I have time for. So yeah,
That's awesome. My wife and I just started fostering about 2 months ago.
keep with it, man. There's a lot of headaches, a lot of heartaches, and everything, but you think about where they could be, and that saves you.
Yeah, we're still super excited about it. We just got 2, and we've got 3 of our own, so pretty full house.
Yeah, I got 6 in total.
Yeah,
It's
so
awesome.
you know where I'm
Man.
coming from. It's pretty great.
You learn how to
Yeah.
do the Henry Ford method of making sandwiches. Yeah.
You mentioned you work with a lot of veterans. Do you have any active duty working with you?
No, they can't. Usually, if it's intelligence, then it's not. They're not allowed to collect information on U.S. persons. I forgot what the manual that is for the Army, but I mean directive that is. But yeah, you can't unless you're counterintelligence and you have a special. I think somebody might be able to correct me on that, but I know for myself.
It falls under the posse comitatus.
Yeah, yeah. I God, I can't remember it. Then you lose after you've been out for a couple of years. You lose all the acronyms and policies. But yeah, it was like I was chasing terror. I was I counterterrorism. I was chasing down some Muslim Brotherhood group, and it ended up coming back to the United States in persons, and I couldn't. So yeah, they can't do that.
So I understand I can't use my job. I am active duty. I'm active duty Navy. But I'm not in the intelligence community. I'm in communications. So, but I just do it on the side. I help out with trace labs, and I've done stuff with intelligence, and they've never mentioned anything about obviously we can't use our position in the Navy for that kind of thing, but they've never said anything about pursuing that interest in our own time.
I can't remember. Usually when you have a clearance, they have you do process paperwork, and one of them may be a non-disclosure agreement and things of that sort. But I think there is a form that. Let me ask. I have a buddy of mine who works down in DC. He might be able to tell me what form it is because he's an Army chief, so he knows all the things involved. So if I find out what that is it Nick who's talking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If I find out what the regulation is on that, I don't know if it might be different. I taught ISs for the Navy too. I'm not sure what policy it is, but I just CYA.
Yeah. No, I'll talk to my security guy on base there, see what he says.
Yep.
Great. Anybody else have any questions?
Was the information a little too in depth? Did it, or do you?
I personally, I plan to go into threat intelligence, but I don't know anything about it. So it was good to see the high level like overview of what I would need to do, but I'm also still in the very basic.
Right.
I think a lot of our club is newer to stuff, so
awesome.
very informative for a newbie like myself. So.
Read, I think his last name's Hewer. Some reading material for you guys. I think his last name's Hewer, Psychology of Intelligence Analysis. I would definitely, if you guys want me to do another thing on a certain subject or whatever, invite me. I'll do another thing. I've been doing this teaching intelligence for near 8-9 years, and I come from the practical side. Cyber threat intelligence is a little bit more discussing two parallels, so it's a little bit more an issue, it's a little more complicated. So
yeah, we do speakers most Wednesdays, so
most Wednesdays. Well, I actually, what's funny is I actually planned on, I went to Bellevue University for a little bit, and I planned on like switching schools. So I just I thought about attending your all's school, so I have to definitely look into that.
I like it so far. We're all online students.
Yep,
so.
That's what I would be. Yeah.
Well, you got a club you can join if you do.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, awesome.
The door is open.
Yeah. I'll be the part of the old man club.
That's okay. Ron will be there with you.
All right.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I would like to thank you for coming, and we will definitely have you back. Just let me know what you want to talk about, and we can.
Sure. I mean, well, yeah. But if there's a subject, I covered a lot of areas, so.
I think everybody's kind of broad. You have your pen testers and hackers, and then you have your threat intelligence people, and there's a bunch of different. So we cover everything. Yeah.
And for anybody who watches this, if it's recorded and they watch it afterwards, feel free to write me on my email, or contact Ray, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming out. I did post your email in the chat and the title of that book. So.
Square.
All right. Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.